Hello and welcome to my Yugioh channel. Today we're looking at a new series of cards which are being introduced as brand new fusion universe monsters in the RD, which is Rushjaw's KP18 series. First card is Elemental Hero Shining Flare Wingman. It's a level 8 light attribute warrior type fusion effect monster with 2500 attack and 2100 defense. The materials are an Elemental Hero Flame Wingman and an Elemental Hero Sparkman, and it must be fusion. There is no requirement and it has a continuous effect. This card gains 300 attack times the number of warrior monsters in your graveyard. When this card destroys a monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, inflict damage to your opponent equal to that monster's original attack. This card is pretty much the same as the original Shining Flare Wingman except for a couple of things. Firstly, it has to be fusion summoned, so that is its own requirement, even though it doesn't have one. And the continuous effect gains 300 attack times the number of warrior monsters in your graveyard. The original version requires the number of elemental hero monsters in your graveyard, so there is a bit of a difference. It's quite a powerful card if and when you can bring it out, and within the slow pacing of Yu-Gi-Oh! Rushjaw's means it actually might have some competitive stay power within that deck. Neospacian Aquadolphin is a level 3 water attribute warrior type effect monster. It's got 600 attack and 800 defense. The requirement is send one card from the hand to the graveyard. The effect is to look at your opponent's hand. Also, you can choose one monster with an attack equal to or less than the attack of the face-up monster on your field with the highest attack in their hand and send it to the graveyard. Also, if you send a monster to the graveyard with this effect, then inflict 500 damage to your opponent. The requirement is just sending a card from the hand to the graveyard, which is fine. It is a discard cost to it. The effect is, if your monster happens to be higher than your opponent's, you're able to send that monster to the graveyard and do 500 points of damage. That is quite useful as, it's not based on this card's stats. If you've got other monsters on your field, you can base it off that. And within Rushjaw's, a lot of monsters, even some of the higher attack ones, tend to be quite low in stats. It's typical for you to be able to access at least one or two cards in their hand. Neospacian Flare Scarab is a level 3 fire attribute insect type effect monster with 500 attack and defense. It has no requirements, and the continuous effect is this card gains 400 attack times the number of spell and trap cards on your opponent's field. This has the ability to gain potentially quite decent attack points, but you're reliant on your opponent putting spell and trap cards on their field, and with Rushjaw's limiting to only 3 cards, maximum this card can become 1,700 attack points, as that's 400 times 3 cards is 1,200 plus the 500 equals 1,700. It's a fine enough stat to get over most arguably level 3/level 4 monsters. Rising Hero Menachita is a level 3 light attribute warrior type effect monster with 900 attack and 1000 defense. The requirement is to place one card from the hand on the bottom of the deck. The effect is to choose one Rising Hero Argent or Rising Hero Tantalum in your graveyard and add it to your hand. The requirement on this card just chooses a card from the hand to put on the bottom of the deck, so it is a little bit of a cost, but depending on how either of the two other named cards are in terms of their abilities will determine whether this card is actually any use. This is the first card we've seen kind of within this hero structure deck that happens to be different from the mainstays. This one here is the Rising Hero Tantalum. It's a level 7 light attribute warrior type effect monster with 2500 attack and 1000 defense. The requirement is to send the top card of your deck to the graveyard. The effect is this card gains 400 attack until the end of the turn. Also, if this is a face-up warrior fusion monster on your field, then you can choose one face-up level 8 or lower monster on your opponent's field and return it to the owner's hand. This card has 2500 attack, which is decent for a level 7 monster. To activate its effect, the requirement is just to send the top card of the deck to the graveyard, which is little consequence. It gains 400 attack for the rest of the turn, so it becomes a 2900 attack monster, and provided you have a face-up warrior monster that has to fusion on the field, you're able to take a face-up level 8 or lower monster on the opponent's field, and it gets returned to the opponent's hand. So if they've gone into a level 8 monster, for example, they've had to tribute over 2 monsters to bring that card out. and it's more likely that they're having to invest into more resources to just bring and recover those cards. Elemental Hero Pulse Neos is a level 7 water attribute warrior type fusion effect monster. It has 2500 attack and 2000 defense, and the materials are an Elemental Hero Neos and a Neospatian Aqua Dolphin. You can contact fusion at this card by fusion summoning through shuffling the above mentioned face-up monsters on your field into the deck. The requirement is none, and the effect is to choose one face-up level 9 or lower monster on your opponent's field and destroy it. This is an alternative version of, say, a water attribute version of Aqua Neos. It does require a Neos and an Aqua Dolphin, but it's just a fusion of the two with no real, resemblance of what Aqua Dolphin does. Instead, this gets to just destroy a level 9 or lower monster your opponent has. So it's decent, but it's kind of weird that it just doesn't have any semblance to Aqua Dolphin. Elemental Hero Heat Neos is a level 7 fire attribute warrior type fusion effect monster with a 2500 attack and 2000 defense. It requires an Elemental Hero Neos and a Neospatian Flare. You can contact fusion this card fusion summon by shuffling the above mentioned face-up monsters on your field into the deck. The requirement is send the top 2 cards of the turn. Okay, so this one is more in resemblance to something like Flare Scarab and actually the Flare Neos, as even though it does require Neos and Flare Scarab, it is have a boosting based effect. You do have to send the top 2 cards of effect to the graveyard, but that's of minimal cost, and this card gains 200 attack times the number of cards on the field. Similarly to the Magma Neos, ironically, as that gains 400 attack times the number of cards on yours and your opponent's field, whereas I think Flare Neos is for all of your spell and traps on the field, and it doesn't account for everything. So this is slightly better, but slightly worse at the same time, as it's a much lower boost. If you and your opponent maximize your field to have 6 cards each, this card could become a 4900 attack monster. Highly unlikely, but given, say for example, you and your opponent had 3 cards in total on their field, well, that's 600 points apiece, that's 1200, making this a 3700 attack monster. Enough to get over those White Dragon or most of the standard threats that your opponent might pose. Out of the cards that have been shown, I think this is my favourite, being the Elemental Hero Heat Neos, as it does take some nod towards Flare Scarab and to Flare Neos, and to a lesser extent to Magma Neos. Whereas with the Pulse Neos, it doesn't really take any sort of effect of the original ability of Aqua Dolphin to kind of rip cards from the opponent's hand. And a couple of these cards are fine, but I don't see them really getting anywhere with the deck, and I think adding the Elemental Hero Neospatians heroes in general are very kind of excessive as is. Do they need the extra additional support in these kind of weird formations as these cards? I'm not necessarily sure that Mechanichita and the Tantalum are requirements, but any other support is, I suppose, fine. What do you guys think of this set of cards? Is this something you consider running, or do you want to be running a more so a pure Elemental Hero / Neospatian deck? As always, I'd love to hear your opinions down below in the comments. Make sure to like the video, it really helps support the channel, and please subscribe. Thank you.